Hello and welcome to the latest edition of the GW Basketball Insiders podcast. I am Liam Omerku, joined by David Korn, and we are here to talk about basketball. Mainly GW basketball.
I never would have got that. I mean, what is this show called again?
I know. GW what? Insiders?
GW Basketball Insiders. Real shocker that we're not talking about Michigan football, right?
Yeah, no, we don't need to talk about Michigan football.
Sorry, that was just like, I don't know.
No. So obviously, if you're watching or listening to this, you probably know that GW lost 79-76 to St. Louis on Tuesday night in St. Louis. They really gave St. Louis a run for their money in many respects. They gave St. Louis their biggest deficit of the season, their biggest challenge at home of the season. They lost by 3. All other A10 teams, the closest another A10 team had gotten, I think, was about 20 points at Chaifetz Arena. So it was an impressive performance, but it was not enough. Robbie Avila hit a huge three-pointer with 3 seconds left to give St. Louis the win. And St. Louis is now off to their best start in program history. They're ranked 21st. I think they should probably be ranked a little higher. They're very, very good. I think they can make the Sweet 16. They're really fun to watch. David, what were your main takeaways from the game?
Well, I just want to push back on something you said really quickly. I thought going into this game, St. Louis was a sort of top 15 team in the country.
Yeah.
I don't think they are. I mean,
GW matched up with them incredibly well, better than any other A10 team.
Yeah, I agree, but I think they showed some real cracks, and they really did need Robbie Avila to save them in the end. And I think a true top 15 team does not struggle like that to a very flawed GW team at home. So that's just my reaction to what you said there. But I mean, my biggest takeaway is that this was an opportunity for GW to make a statement win. And GW is at a point in their season where they've put themselves in a position where metrics don't really matter that much. The losses to, I think, Delaware, Dayton, the losses at the MTE, not being able to take advantage of an opportunity against George Mason, Davidson, and all of that. They've put themselves in a position where individual games don't really matter that much in terms of the overall season. But this game, you were on the road against a ranked opponent. This could have been a statement that said, you know what, we're a problem in the Atlantic 10. And this could have really caught people's attention. It could have maybe helped turn the season around a little bit. Not that it's necessarily a failure at this point, but it could have really given them a lot of momentum. And this would have been, I think, the most impressive victory of Chris Caputo's tenure as a GW coach. I think it's, I know the quad system, whatever, but I think this was the toughest game of the season. I think seeing the way Florida has been this year, I think at St. Louis in conference play is a tougher matchup than a non-conference neutral site against Florida. I think this was a more difficult game for them to win. And it was super winnable. They were up 15 at one point. They went into the half up 10, and they just, same story we've heard all year. They fell apart in the second half, and then down the stretch when they had a chance to really make something happen, GW could not get it done.
Yeah, they're 1-8 in games decided by 10 points or less. We put out a tweet saying, send us some questions for things to talk about on this podcast. And we got a question from Cameron Mays, who came on the podcast earlier this year, that said, they're 1-8 in just games decided by 10 points or less. What do you do about that? Which I actually think that's a really good way to frame that question, because it's okay, they're going to have more close games. How do you fix that? What do you do? So, I mean, what's your take on how to fix that?
So, I looked at this in a few ways, right? So I before we got hopped on this, I rewatched the final minute basically. And
did you use my live stream, or did you go back on ESPN Plus?
Your live stream is great, but I did use ESPN Plus. Unfortunately, I never actually lost the stream. So what I think happened is I think people were prompted to either switch to the Virginia Tech game, or you say, if you didn't do anything, you lost the stream. But I clicked away from that and I said, no, I want to stay.
ESPN Plus does that sometimes.
So I clicked away from it and I was good. So think that might have been it, and so I don't
I
really
forgot that prompt. It was very the whole
so
situation was
whatever.
very.
Luckily enough, I didn't dote, so I was not among the masses. I believe the two most prominent people in your stream were Tim Miller and Jim Root, I think, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. Also,
Um,
Sam Fetterman was in there. He followed.
oh,
me.
you're right, the goat. I just got a Sam Fetterman follow the other day. That was pretty cool.
He followed me yesterday after I streamed this.
I guess he's locked in on GW.
Yeah, I think he's probably more locked in on St. Louis, but I'll take the follow for sure.
So anyway, I was rewatching the last minute on ESPN Plus on the replay. One great feature about ESPN Plus, GW did have a string of games that were not on ESPN, and so replays of those were tougher to find, but I was able to watch that back. And I had a few takeaways. There was no timeout called. When there was a timeout that could have been called, I know you want to talk about those 3 seconds where they could have maybe drawn up a bigger play, but when GW got the ball back, when they rebounded the St. Louis miss, they did not call a timeout. They just went straight up. And I know there are two sides to that coin where you might want to catch the defense off guard, not let them set up. But I would hope that, not doing that almost seems like an admission that you're ready to be outcoached, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I realized that. I was like, maybe the out of time, and I know some of these out of timeout plays from Capito, especially over the last few games in late game situations, haven't necessarily been great, but I would still
He's
hope.
had a few really good ones. He's had a few elite ones. Like there was late, not the last play, but late in the George Mason game, he had one that was like led to a Rafael Castro slam dunk. Like he has some that are good, but some of them have been really bad.
And yeah, no, I think that, again, hindsight maybe should have called the timeout there. And then the look that GW got on that possession was Tyrone Marshall Jr., who had an amazing game. I think this was his best game as a Rev. Yep, he got a one-on-one matchup against Robbie Avila on the perimeter, and he just drove at him. And Avila has a little bit of a size advantage, but I think a big gap in like athleticism. And so I don't thank you. And I don't
this way, not this way.
I think he also has an inch or two.
Yeah, he probably does.
But
Marshall was like driving on him all night, and it was working.
Yes, so I don't hate that look. And so he got that, wasn't able to convert. Johnson then got the rebound. He went up really quick with the putback, even though the shot clock reset. And so he could have had time to bring it back down and then try and do something else with that. So I just think that is a sign of sort of just a frantic, not really understanding the moment. And then on the other side, I mean, we've all seen the Avila shot, Castro not rushing to cover him on the fade after the pick and pop. It
was bad. It was really bad defense. He was hunting for a block, which there's actually a great thread on Twitter by PD Buckets, who he's a Mason fan, right?
He's a George Mason account. Also shout out PD Buckets for defending me when I was getting some ire from although it might have been a little backhanded compliment, but I still appreciate it. I've come under a firestorm of Mason fans lately. I believe I've been deemed a known Mason shit talker, which I think is pretty crazy that someone's thinking about me that much. But anyway,
but his thread was really good.
No, PD Buckets has good stuff. Yeah.
It was basically about how Rafael Castro there's two examples from late in the St. Louis game and one example from the George Mason game where he's struggled defending big guys on the perimeter. And it was very similar to what happened on the last shot where he hangs around in the paint and doesn't contest the shot or waits too long to contest the shot. And especially on the last play, it's clear that I forget who it was that was driving in on Garrett Johnson. He's driving in. Rafael Castro sticks around because he's trying to get a block. He's trying to, bang the ball off the back.
And again, he had 4 blocks, and a lot of them were highlight reels. And I think this was his best rim protection game of his.
He was awesome defensively, with the exception of you cannot leave Robbie Avila open for a 3-pointer. You just that's dumb. He's like a what is it, 47, 48? Yeah, 47% 3-point shooter.
Yeah, and you saw Autry on that play try and get over as quick as he could. But the thing with St. Louis is, again, it was a tie game, so it's not like they needed the 3. So you still need to defend everyone. because even if they aren't a great 3-point shooter, they can still cut it, and they had time. And so it's a tough thing. In that situation, you really do have to sort of stay with your man at a certain point, because you cannot. And GW was playing a lot of man yesterday. And
I thought that was one of their best defensive performances of the year. They were awesome,
Yeah.
defensively, especially in the first half. Against the St. Louis offense, that's really, really good. I know you said you were a little not as impressed after the game last night, but they scored 150 points or some shit on St. Bonaventure last Friday. They're really good on offense.
St. Bonaventure is falling apart, but
yeah, that's not the point.
So getting back to the question, I think there are a few things. One, GW seems just more frantic at the end of games than other teams. I know Josh Schertz in his post-game interview, I forget where this was, whether it was on ESPN, on the ESPN Plus broadcast, or seeing a quote after the game. But he was talking about how level-headed Avila is, and how he always seems to have a resting heartbeat, never gets too overly excited, and is just sort of calm in these types of situations. And I feel like that's something that GW doesn't really have, maybe outside of Trey Autry. And you saw that with Garrett Johnson when he went right for that tip, and you've seen that with Rafael Castro when he has missed some of these layups and free throws in crucial situations. And so I just think that's the biggest difference. And at a certain point, I don't think that's necessarily a coaching problem. And I think it's just sort of the luck of the draw with the guys you have here. And I feel bad saying that, because that's such an intangible thing.
Well, that's the hard thing, is that it's so it's hard to quantify it. They just haven't been able to do it.
Do you have the luck statistics available?
Yeah, they're 360th in the country, I believe.
Yeah, so that's a statistic on KenPom, great stats website. I'm sure recommend it fully, but it basically tries to quantify luck, and there are GW's bottom 5.
Yeah,
in the country.
I think they were actually somehow even worse before the St. Louis game last night.
Oh, that's shocking. But
yeah, I think they were so 83 or something.
So I don't know. I another way I looked at it was that GW left a lot of points on the floor yesterday. They missed their first 6 free throws, and then to end the first half, let up a sort of Hail Mary bank shot 3 at the buzzer from
that was killer. That gave St. Louis a little bit of momentum after GW played
Quentin Jones. So that gave them some momentum, got them 3 points when they really didn't need that. And in a close game that did come down to the buzzer, those points really mattered. And so I think that's another thing where GW is pretty consistently leaving points on the floor. And
you mentioned they missed a lot of layups. These shots too close to the basket. It's been an issue all year, but they keep missing the and one layups. They go in and they get fouled and they don't make the layup, which is a problem when you go and start 0 for 6 from the line.
Yeah.
And, I guess they finished the game 14 for 21 from the free throw line. So they
did come back, and they did. Right. And Marshall is a big part of that. He made a few big and ones. But and then the other thing, again, I don't think this is an end of game situation. I think we've answered Cameron's question sufficiently. I think we're sort of just moving on to broader discussions of the game. Thank you for the question, Cameron. We appreciate it.
It's a really great question, and like I said, I liked it was phrased.
Yeah, we appreciate it. I think the big thing as well is this was in the sort of around the 10-minute mark of the second half. The 15-0 run St. Louis went on, which
I sort of knew that was coming at some point.
Yeah, and it's a kill shot. It's one of, I think, the most important statistics in college basketball, coined by Evan Mia. Basically, when a team goes on a 10-0 run, they win 78% of the time. No matter what the score is, no matter when the time it happens, if a team goes on a 10-0 run at any point in the game, that is one of the strongest indicators of victory of any stat. And they went on a 15-0 run. So take the lead. They went up 7 on that. I've mentioned this before today, but I think maybe took a little too long to call that timeout, they didn't call a timeout. I don't think they just let it.
They called a timeout right before the under 8. So I don't know. I think that was sort of midway through the run. Um,
You got to call another one. I mean, if you go
well,
basically
the
5 minutes without scoring,
we're going to sit here and say, yeah, you got to call a timeout. And the response is like, well, I want to save those timeouts for late in the game.
but you didn't
Well, you
use the
didn't call
timeout you
the
had.
time late in the game either. Were you calling the timeout on the fucking plane? Like, you have to use your timeouts. Like,
Yeah.
it's been an issue. And like, if you don't want to use them to stop momentum, that's fine. Don't
So
do
this
that.
is, I
But
think,
like, just you can't not use your timeouts because then that gives us we can sit here and criticize and say, well, what if they called the timeout? It would have been different. Blah
so
blah blah.
stuff like this is why I wish um there was more of a robust media contingent.
Yeah.
And
Oh, David, do we want to get into the DC area, sports
I
media
I,
news of
I
the week?
think we can I
I think
actually have a point
sure.
I can bring up at the end of this, a treat for the listeners, but I just think it's one of those things where it really would have been helpful to talk to
Yeah.
people after this game. And it's a shame that there is
Yeah.
not. And I
For
know that's a tough ask for there to be traveling media, but I know St. Louis has a pretty robust
they do.
media contingent.
They do. They have
They
they've
have
got a newspaper guy and then they've got a guy, Stu Durando, who does it. He sort of just does it independently, doesn't he?
Stu Durando, who used to write for the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. He was actually the president of the USBWA for a bit.
Was he?
But he has a Substack, and he's, I think, the standard bearer for A10 Media.
He's great. Him and the Dayton David Jablonski
Yeah.
are great. He's the one who when I mentioned the stat about the biggest deficit St. Louis has faced this year was 14 early in the first half against GW. He's the one who posted that. So
Yeah. So he's a great follow. I've talked to him before. Very nice guy. But he's so yeah, basically what I'm saying is I that could have been a situation where I know GW probably wanted to get back to their plan and back to DC, but maybe there could have been an away team press conference for that situation.
Yeah.
And
it's just yeah. It's we could you and I both know we could go into a long tangent about the media, atmosphere, and to get someone traveling to away games, it means that you would have to have enough of a subscriber base to pay for it. It's complicated, but I agree. I think
and like to pull back the curtain. When I went to Florida, right? I was able to find really good flight deals that I was able to use with points.
Yeah.
My parents were generous enough to share with me. They had a free hotel night from something, and so they were generous enough to. Yeah, they have some rewards thing, and it was like if you find a hotel under a certain whatever, you can under a certain point total, like one free night. And so there's some pretty weird circumstances that so like they weren't going to be able to use it, so I was able to do that. So like that's how I was able to get to Florida.
Yeah, but like for a Tuesday night in St. Louis in the middle of a snowstorm, like it's just hard. You know what I mean? Like it's hard to get to these places. It was. I mean, we were both at the South Florida game in Connecticut, and I know at least for me, it was a little bit of like, all right, I'm gonna go up and stay with my friend in New York. Like kind of Hudson Valley.
Yes, that was a day trip for me. I'm in Boston right now, right outside of Boston, I should say. But that was a day trip, and it was a lot of driving. It was like 4 hours, and I've done all sorts of trips to cover games. When I was in DC, I would drive down to Richmond. I did that for VCU George Mason last year, which was an awesome game. I'm super glad I did it.
Yeah.
This year, I drove down to Providence, Rhode Island to see Providence Rhodey. That was a cool game. So trips are doable, but again, like to St. Louis, that's a tough one. So what I'm saying is that a lot of questions that could have been asked. So we are left to speculate. But yeah, that 15-0 run. Sorry for the tangent. That 15-0 run was killer. And I was actually really impressed with the response.
Well, that's the thing is we're talking about, they're 1-8 and 10-point games and all this different stuff. And well, did they lack the grit? Did they lack the mental composure? Blah, blah, blah. Repeatedly, this happens. The other team will go on a run and they're not like, they don't just roll over. And there were multiple times where it's like St. Louis gets it within, 7 or something like that. And then GW gets it back up. Like, especially early in that second half, they were kind of fighting back. And the fact that they fought back after that 15-0 run is like, it's there. That like intangible thing that we're talking about that they don't have at the end of the game it exists in some
That's
form.
that's sort of
It's
what I was
different,
like theorizing about and like talking about like what Schertz was saying in regards to Avila,
yeah,
where when it's not that late game situation, they can do it.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I think the tangibles are there. It's an intangible thing,
Well, they
and
have in the most
again,
literal sense.
I feel bad sort of trying to psychoanalyze this, get in these guys' heads, but
It's
I
confusing. It's very,
it
very
has I
confusing.
think it is because again that 1-8 stat is telling, and I think it has become a pattern. So I think it has to be discussed.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's just like we see the talent that this team has, and that's part of the reason why they're able to get back into these games after the other team goes on a 15-0 run is because they have really talented players who can score the basketball. So,
Can we talk about some things we liked from GW for this game? Because they did go
absolutely.
toe to toe against a an elite team, not an elite A10 team, just an elite team on the road. So
Yeah,
there was a lot of good things.
I'm
What
really
was
in on this St. Louis team. I really think they're very good. And Shirts always puts it together in year two.
so what was something you liked that you saw from
The
GW?
defense. I thought the defense was
Mhm.
some of the best that I've seen this year. They just especially early in the game, I believe I saw some quote from Josh Shirts that it's like they punched us in the mouth and we had to taste our own blood. And
Mhm.
GW really did. They were disrupting them. They weren't allowing them to get I feel like early they forced a lot of turnovers and got some runouts and stuff like that. Like it seemed like St. Louis was just like GW came to play. GW came with the energy, especially on defense, and St. Louis kind of, it seemed like they were a little surprised by that.
Yeah, and talking about that defense, I think Castro's defensive effort was really impressive. 18 rebounds, career high, 4 blocks, ties a career high, 3 steals. Uh, he did the thing where he gets into passing lanes. He also had a few of the classic just like rip outs for steals.
Yeah.
And then some of these blocks, off the backboard, skying in from nowhere into the stands. He was everywhere and making life really tough for St. Louis at the rim. And they were
He
lucky.
really he really is an incredible athlete. And
Yeah, because
it's really fun
Avila
to
had a
watch.
good game from 3. Trey Green was hitting him from deep. So they had guys, but they did sort of have to go away from the rim because of how dominant Castro was.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
yes,
they were hiding. The other thing is they were hiding Avila on defense. Like they
yep,
were putting other guys on him, on
yeah,
Castro because they didn't think that Robbie Avila could play good enough defense against Rafael Castro.
and he couldn't. The few times Castro
Correct.
did get a one-on-one matchup with him, he won.
Yeah.
And yeah, like there's a lot of McCautry on him and Ishan Sharma. Like they both had a lot of.
Yeah, but they started doubling later in the game. Something you sort of saw in the
And I
Dayton game.
think that's something that teams have realized works on Castro is where you put
Yeah.
2 smaller guys on him.
Yeah, I think the Dayton game was really what showed that. But I mean, GW has the shooters that if they're able to think about this the right way, then okay, if the double comes from here, then you kick it to this guy or whatever. But sometimes it looks like Castro is a little bit panicked when he gets doubled like that, and they waited later in the game to do it, which I found interesting.
And I also really liked Trey Autry.
Yeah,
I think
he's a damn good player.
his shooting was very stabilizing. 13 points on 4 threes, including a 4-point shot. I think they were.
Can we talk about the Trey Autry 4-point shots? I don't know if you've seen me talking about this
It's
at
like
all.
Jamal Crawford. He just
It's
makes
insane.
them.
He's made. I mean, what would you say? I think he's probably made 10 or more this year. And there's I don't know if there's another GW player who's made one. He's really good at making these, getting fouled and making a 3-pointer. I'm sure if I really, if I was unemployed right now, I would sit there and I would go through and I would find all the times that it happened. But it seems like he doesn't often miss when he gets fouled like that. But I could just only be remembering the times he makes it.
Can I share another thing I liked that I think is maybe a little more under the radar?
You may.
I thought, despite the maybe unimpressive stat line, I thought Trey Dinkins was still valuable to this team today. And I think this was one of the first games I've seen of his as a GW revolutionary where he wasn't necessarily shooting everything when he got it and didn't necessarily play heavy minutes, but was still valuable. He finished with 7 points, he had like one big rebound. I forget the exact situation, but I like noted that he had a good rebound. He made a big three late in the game. He had a putback. Like he was making his presence known. Like he found a middle ground, which I think is really crucial.
And he still hit an outrageously silly shot. Like the one three he hit, I laughed.
One-legged, created his own everything. Yeah, but he found a middle ground, which I think is exciting to see, that maybe he isn't necessarily just going to be so boom or bust.
Right. He can impact a game when he's not just when he's going to hit, 5 threes, half of which are like the guy's fingers are up his nose.
It's like what Tyler from a 3-bid league likes to just call the Trey Dinkins experience. And I think today, or the game against SLU bucked that trend in a good way.
Yeah, agreed. And it's nice because it's not like, oh, well, Trey Dinkins had a game, like, well, if only he could do that every game, or if only it wasn't every 4 or 5 games that he did that. It's like he could show up against Fordham and hit, 600 3-pointers. So,
God, if GW loses to Florida or to Fordham, that's gonna be me.
Why don't we start moving on to a little bit of looking forward. One of my final thoughts about the St. Louis matchup is it sucks that these teams only play once this year. And in fact, I really hope that GW plays them again in the conference tournament.
Do you want to share can you reveal to the audience who shares that sentiment with you?
Zach Bovair, former GW assistant. Not the second part, just I hope they play more than once.
Yes.
Yeah, I tweeted that, and he was one of 2 people to like it. Well, and it's like, I think he might be a little biased because he's coached at GW and at St. Louis. And they really do run remarkably similar offense. So I wish they played twice instead of GW playing LaSalle and Loyola twice. I know Loyola was supposed to be good this year, but still.
Well, I think they did the schedule pairings before.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah, no, they did it before we knew that Loyola was bad.
Yeah, obviously.
So, but yeah, looking ahead. So here's an interesting question. That isn't a mailbag because no one sent it to us, but I saw it on the message board and I thought it was interesting to talk about. So, do they end with more losses than last year? Because right now they have 8, and last year they had 12, and they're 4-4 in the conference. So they're in this spot. They have, I don't know how many games left. And I think there's a segment of people that are like, this team indicates to me that they're, a 10-8 or a 9-9 A10 team, but they have a pretty weak schedule remaining compared to the games they've already played. And
let's run it down. All right. Fordham, that should be a win. At St. Joe's is going to be sneaky hard. Joe's have won 5 in a row, right?
Yeah, they're good. So I'm going to that game. And I'm going to that game with my cousin and her husband and their 2 kids who are big St. Joe's basketball fans. And on Thanksgiving, I had a few drinks and made a bet with my cousin's kid who's 9 years old. And I said, if GW beats St. Joe's, I get to wear your chain for a week. And if St. Joe's beats GW, I will buy you a Nintendo Switch game.
Wow.
So we have a chain bet going on. I will be at the game.
You're gonna pull in Aqib Talib and snatch his chain?
Maybe I will. That happened to a friend of mine on the Barcelona Metro one time. True story. It's like the guy just snatched it right off his. So it just means a little bit more for me. I'm not going to be at that game as media because I'm going to be sitting with them. But
does St. Joe's have an in-house beer that you can sample?
I don't know. Let me look that up. But anyway, so that I'll be at that game next Wednesday. And reporting live.
I love it. Even though you will not be media, would you like to still do a live post-game show from there?
Yeah, I just need to think about the logistics of that.
Just bring your laptop and just post up. I think you've been there. You should still automatically connect to the Wi-Fi.
Yeah, that's true. Actually,
this is notoriously awful Wi-Fi.
Maybe I'll do a hotspot. We'll do
well,
I'll be like a police officer. I'll set my laptop up in my car as I'm driving home.
The big thing you got to do though is you got to say hi to Joe Lenardi when you're there.
Oh, that's right. Well, I
St.
don't know.
Joe's,
If I'm not media, I don't know if I'll be like, hey Joe.
he loves talking. He can
I'm
say
sure,
hi to anyone.
Sure.
Yeah. No. Joe Lenardi, if you weren't aware, ESPN's, I think, chief men's bracketologist, is the St. Joe's TV analyst. And sometimes on the road, the radio analyst, if he makes the trip. So, very nice. Him and Matt Martucci are one of my favorite, maybe my favorite A10 broadcast duo other than Byron and Jimmy.
Yeah. Oh. They do have a beer, and it's a hazy IPA.
Two of those, and you'll be.
I know I'm not gonna be able to drive. You're like, I'll have to stick around and do the podcast because I'm drunk.
Liam's sobering up on the pod with us. Oh, that's must watch. Here's what you'll do. You'll have a few. You'll sober up on the podcast and then soak it up with a cheesesteak from Larry's across the street. Where
I don't think those cheesesteaks are very good.
No, they're not very good, but that's Kobe's favorite. So it's
Kobe's favorite.
Yeah, have you ever been inside the one next?
Yes. Yeah. I went in there. So
you've seen the Kobe Bryant shrine that they have.
Yeah, that's true. The high school I went to was in the district championship game, the District 1 championship game, and won the district championship. And they played it at Hagan Arena. A bunch of white kids. It was, who would have thought? It was incredible. It was like the first time since the 80s. So and then I went there with my friends after the game, and it was mobbed with high school kids. And we were trying these cheesesteaks, and we were like, these are terrible. Like, these aren't good at all.
No, I mean, I'm not from Philly. I'm not a cheesesteak connoisseur. I actually have a hot take.
God.
I've had a cheesesteak in Waltham, Massachusetts that is not better than, but is on par with the top tier Philly cheesesteaks.
Yeah. It's all about the bread. It's about the bread.
Yeah, it's a good bread. Because I think a cheesesteak is a pretty I think once you get to like the great cheesesteaks tier, I don't think there's a lot that separates them.
Agreed. There's a lot of places in the Philly area, like a random pizza place or whatever.
Yeah.
As long as they have good bread, then it's a solid cheesesteak. And a lot of those bigger places, it's just straight up not worth going to like Pat's or Gino's to like wait in the long line.
Well, Pat's and Gino's are literal tourist traps.
Yeah, that's
the best Philly food. My last Philly food thought. John's roast pork. The roast pork sandwich.
I've actually never had one of those. I don't think.
The roast pork sandwich. So it's on like the seeded roll. It's this pork that's like been like slow simmered in this like super flavorful like Italian jus, sort of like broccoli rabe and like a really really sharp provolone. Oh my god, it is one of the. It is a thrilling sandwich to eat.
Yeah, I'll have to do it. When I was in Chicago a few weeks ago, I had an Italian beef, which like I needed to take a nap afterwards. That was ridiculous. But
don't love an Italian beef. I think the bread gets too wet.
It was a lot. They had the option to do semi-wet or dry. It was serious business. Anyway, I mean we could just keep talking about food if you want. Or we should
get back to This is the GW Basketball Insiders podcast.
I know. Here I am saying we're going to talk about basketball, and what are we doing? Not talking about basketball.
Talking regional sandwiches.
Regional sandwiches. Next time it'll be Boston. Don't worry, David. We'll
here, I'll do one more thing. Seattle, in the Super Bowl, there'll be a lot of spotlights on Seattle culture. I think they have one of the most interesting hot dogs in the country, the Seattle dog, which is a hot dog with cream cheese and caramelized onions. So that's my last food thought.
I think hot dogs are disgusting anyway. Okay. Anyway, let's keep going through this schedule. So Fordham at home, St. Joe's away. What's next? What do we have?
Duquesne on the road, which is going to be a tough one. Duquesne is sneaky, and I'm always going to be worried about a Max Edwards revenge game.
That's true. Should he even be playing this year? Didn't he get into some trouble?
That's a comment for off the air. Versus Rhode Island, who just went into Dayton and won, which is something that GW could not do. So
I know. What's that about? Like, did Archie just save his job with that win?
I think to the ire of Rhode Island fans, he might be in the process of saving his job.
I think
Although
that buyout
I don't
is
think his job was ever really at risk because of his buyout. So,
so
about
that'll
that.
test GW is currently 0-6 under Chris Caputo in the state of Pennsylvania. You may have seen my tweet last night that Chris Caputo is 1-13 in states won by Donald Trump in the 2024 election. He's actually 2-13. Thank you to Jay Catsby, Davidson fan, who corrected me. Both of those wins have come against Davidson. But when I discovered that, I was like, that's a hilarious stat, and I have to share it with as many people as possible. But
can I maybe add some context as to why he's gotten those wins at Davidson?
Go for it.
What is Davidson? It's a liberal arts school.
See, this is why we keep you around, David. This is why we keep you around. There does exist a photo of Chris Caputo and his wife with Joe Biden. So just leave that there. I'm happy to talk. I'm happy to talk politics on this. Podcast.
Shout out Hunter Biden wearing the GW basketball shorts.
That's true. That's true.
So then Rhode Island's going to be sneaky.
Yeah. Anyway.
Then after Rhode Island is playing George Mason at home in GW's first Friday 10 game since when?
In a very long time. Since before either of us were
around.
Fans. Are you going to go to that game? I'm going to be in DC for that game.
No, I believe I'm trying to get down for the Dayton game on the 27th.
Okay. I don't think I'm going to be able to do that.
Well, you have more incentive to be there that weekend than I do.
Well, that's true. It is.
Then the next game is at VCU. That's gonna be another tough one. Although GW has had success at the Siegel Center, most notably with the James Bishop buzzer beater a few years ago. So who knows? I think VCU is vulnerable. I really like VCU, but I don't think they're not as good as I thought they would be, and I think they have shown some cracks. Then after VCU, you have at LaSalle. Anything at Gola's can be up, or Glazer now can be up in the air.
I'll be at that game too. We can do a live podcast after that one if you want.
I love it. Then versus Dayton, we might get a lot of live podcasts that week if I'm at Dayton.
That's
so
true. That's
lucky
true.
You guys. Then versus St. Bonaventure at Loyola. So just looking at that, I think there are 6 games in there that could be losses. I think
6 games that could be losses. I was gonna say I see 2 losses there.
I think at Joe's, at Duquesne, versus Rhode Island, versus Mason, at VCU, and versus Dayton are all up in the air. I'm not even counting the at LaSalle trap game that messes with everyone. But
no, I think you're probably right.
I don't think these games are layups. And
no, I'm with you.
Especially with a team that maybe is feeling a little defeated after some brutal losses against the shorthanded Dayton. And that last second one against George Mason, last second against St. Louis. I think there's a world in which this team starts to spiral. I think the big thing to watch this weekend against Fordham will be to see the response.
Yeah, the thing is, with the exception of in spots like this, they have eviscerated teams. Like they have just absolutely dominated teams. Coming off the Dayton loss, they won 101-66 against Loyola Chicago. Now, I mean, the Loyola Chicago team was missing half the roster and all this different stuff, but GW has been really good, and this is why their metrics are still so good. They've been really good at just killing teams that they're better than.
Yeah.
But, no, there's definitely some spots in there that they could struggle with. So, I mean, what's your answer? Do you think I guess you have to consider the postseason too.
I think there's a middle ground. I don't think they fully give up or lay it down or really just go on a losing streak. I think they'll beat the teams they're supposed to beat. I think of those 6 games, I said they'll probably go 3-3.
Right.
That's a really uninspiring and not super exciting answer. Like, it's not good content for me to say that. It's not, But,
yeah. Well, I mean, you're probably right. But okay, so if they go out there and they roll Fordham and then they come on the road and they beat St. Joe's, that could have the opposite effect. Okay, now we're back in it. Now
that Joe's game is going to be tough though. That
Joe's
game is going to be really tough Joe's right now, they're on this winning streak, and it's been a big addition by subtraction situation where Deuce Jones was removed from the program, and they've looked like a completely different team. And Steve Donahue, again, a lot of people don't think he should necessarily have had the job, but he's showing that he's doing a lot right. And
Oh my God, keeps this job another year.
He will. He's already done enough to get it. I really think so. If he just beats the teams he's supposed to the rest of the way, wins a game in the A10 tournament, he will stay.
He's a solid coach. He's a decent coach. His daughter actually went to high school with me. Fun fact.
Can you get any Joe scoops from that connection?
No, I was never friends with her. She.
How didn't you anticipate that might be a worthwhile relationship?
She got a perfectly timed education from the University of Pennsylvania for, I don't know if it was free, but it was certainly a nice discount if your dad's the head basketball coach.
And a nice little admissions boost as well, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, that's.
But she
was very smart. She was,
No, and so I don't. It's tough because this is clearly this team has the potential to do great things, but because of what has happened, they are now way out of any sort of postseason. I think they could still play their way into the NIT, probably.
Yeah. So the world in which that happens, in like the way I look at it, especially after that St. Louis game, is okay. You end in the 4 or the 5 spot.
Well, not even. I think you've seen in the A10, like top 5 or 6 win a game in the tournament gets you in. GW was on the NIT bubble last year.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, okay, so say you finish 5th and they play what, like the 12 seed? I don't even know who the 12 seed is right now, but they should beat the 12 seed. And then you play against, I don't know, like who would even be 4th? Like Dayton at this point? I don't know if Davidson is
VCU could be.
VCU. Anyway, you get what I'm saying. Okay, you come in 4th or 5th. And then if you can make it through that, which is a big assumption because GW has not won multiple games in the A10 tournament since like 2007 or something, then you probably get another matchup with that St. Louis team. That's probably going to be more ready for you. But I maintain this GW team matches up really well with St. Louis.
So that's the other thing. You're right, because the thing about these close losses is that they are close losses, and GW has played against the top of the conference very well in terms of playing it close. On the road at Mason, on the road at St. Louis, those were decided in the final 30 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, the Mason thing is, we'll see how this next game goes, but I think they might have a Mason.
George Mason, by the way, who lost to Rhode Island. So,
yeah, notable, maybe.
Am I shit talking when I say that, Liam?
I don't know. Well, we don't need to go in. We don't need to relitigate the whole talent thing, but I mean, from a NIL perspective, GW's spending more on the roster than George Mason is, so whatever. So, okay, final thing, because we said that we would try not to ramble on past 45 minutes, and we're at 43 right here. So here's the question, and there'll be probably more clarity on this in the coming weeks as we get further towards the end of the season. How do you square the fact that this is the best GW men's basketball team in probably 10 years and the best that either of us have ever seen with the fact that they have not lived up to expectations?
I think it's a real bummer for GW fans because in this portal era, it's one of those things where if you can't win with this team, it's difficult to imagine a world where GW would have more success in the transfer portal and building a roster than they had this past offseason.
And bringing the guys back and all that.
And so I think there's just a sense of I'm struggling to find the words, but because I think dread is too serious, but there's just a sense of maybe just accepting their place in the college basketball sphere, where this is maybe the ceiling, which I think is kind of sad. And it's tough because you would hope that with the investment that more would come. And it's one of those things where you don't know what the ripple effects of a disappointing season could have because, will that money go away now? Because they weren't able to capitalize
because it's revenue sharing. A lot of it is revenue sharing and not like donations from outside. I don't think it will, at least in the immediate future.
But it's one of those things where it is upsetting, and it's because again there is that financial investment, whether you're a donor, and I know there are donors who are very frustrated that feel like their funds have been misused this year because of the lack of success, and that's a thing you have to deal with when you have that push for money. You get that money and you make all these moves, and it isn't working. So you have to want it's I just think it's an if not now, when type of thing.
Yeah.
Where if this group couldn't get it done, then what shot does a different group have?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like that extra money is being spent to push you over the line, to win you that close game at George Mason, or, you know, win you that game at Dayton or whatever, like to kind of take that. I don't want to say final, because the final step up would be winning the league, but it's like the expectations were that this team has the talent and they could maybe make the NCAA tournament. And they're like, that's not gonna happen.
And I think it's also just
them
a
winning
shame.
the A10.
It's also a shame that again, the season isn't done, could still go on a run in the A10 tournament, whatever. But at this point, it seems like you are not capitalizing on Rafael Castro's time at GW when he is, I mean, I think, who do you even go back to? I mean, you could say James Bishop, but I think they're very different types of players. I'm not sure there has been a player who has the potential to impact winning on both sides of the ball since who?
I mean, neither of us have ever.
I think you could make an argument that he's better than Yuta, better than Garino, better than Kavanaugh.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's a question I'll leave to people who have watched GW basketball for longer than I have, and feel free to, respond.
Like, do you go for at least big men? I mean, you got to go back to Yinka Dare, right? Like that's the last one. And so to just waste that, because a player like that,
it's hard to find good big men, especially in the transfer portal. It's really hard.
A player like that who comes back, you're 2 years in the program, does not come around very often. So it's a shame that this team seems to not be able to have capitalized on having a true star, because true stars do not come around very often.
Right. No, I mean, and like the talent is there on paper, but they just haven't been able to execute in close games. And down the stretch, there's going to be more close games. Like you're not going to be able to go through the A10 tournament, or, if you get into the NIT or the Crown or whatever. Oh God, the Crown. I don't even want to think about the goddamn Crown.
We run back the Crown.
If what does running back the Crown even entail?
I mean,
getting absolutely waxed by Boise State, because I don't want to do at 4 p.m. on a Wednesday.
Hey, I had a great time. I was listening to that game poolside in Costa Rica to Abe and Scott. I was very drunk. It was quite a time.
I went over and watched it in the business building at GW with a few. It was strange, and it was like that time of the year when they hadn't switched from heating to AC yet, and it was like a hot day. It was boiling in that, it was like Duquesne or something like that, and I didn't have cable, so I couldn't watch it. It was kind of a mess. It was.
So before we wrap up, I teased some Washington Post / media thoughts that I would save for the end. I would just like to say that Chris Caputo was ahead of the curve on the proposed reported end of the Washington Post sports section, when he called out Jeff Bezos at the Atlantic 10 tournament last year because he believes that local college basketball deserved more attention. It seems like every sport now will need more attention from Bezos, with the potential shuttering of the sports department, which is a disaster of one of the most impressive papers and historical papers in the country, in a city with 4 major professional sports teams, with no other local paper that really covers them. I think it's embarrassing, and Capito is ahead of the curve. Called out
Yep.
Bezos, so good for him for having an eye on that.
Yeah, no, I mean it's bad in so many ways, and I mean it's more than just the sports section. It's the foreign desk, and it's
Yeah,
all
I mean the sports is what's I guess relevant to us and our
yeah,
audience.
no, absolutely, that's what's relevant. But it's like it's just sad because I think for a while there was a conception that this was about actually providing good sports coverage. The only thing this has ever been about is getting more money for Jeff Bezos. And
the thing is,
like,
I think he's wrong, because I don't think turning the Washington Post into another Politico is going to really drive up subscribers, because there already is something like that. What there is not another local DC paper, and that's the way to keep the local subscribers. I know I don't live in DC anymore. I still subscribe to the Post. I love their sports section. I think it's up. I mean, I think like them and the Globe, our Boston Globe, my hometown paper, are, especially since the New York Times shuttered theirs. Well, they didn't really shutter it. They kind of expanded it with the Athletic, who still gets bylines in the New York Times now. But either way, I love their sports section. And 2 great Nationals beat writers. Chelsea Janes is one of my favorite national baseball writers. A lot of good football stuff in there. Really good sports investigation pieces as well.
yeah, and that goes along with a lot of the stuff that the Post does as a whole. And it's just like
I forget who wrote it, but the piece on the piece on the LSU women's basketball coach. I can't believe I'm
Kim Mulkey.
Yeah, on Kim Mulkey. The piece on Kim Mulkey that came out, I believe, last year during March Madness. One of the most well-researched, well-reported pieces I've ever read. Yeah, it's a shame. I really hope that doesn't happen, and hope that eventually, in a perfect world, it reverses course and more of the local college basketball teams get coverage on the region's premier media outlet.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it just illustrates the fact that if you want if you want to find coverage of local college basketball, you have to go to the source. And there's like less and less. I mean, I go to the source in terms of like go to people who are experts on it, because the Post is just straight up not employing a GW beat reporter. And
yeah, I'm not saying that there's like necessarily an audience for GW beat reporter.
No, yeah,
but I think there is
like
an audience for sending a general sports reporter or maybe a college sports reporter to big GW games.
Yeah, a GW George Mason game, or Capito has talked about it at length, or the A10 tournament last year. It's not good, and
we should not be the only source of GW basketball news out there.
Right. I mean, like, we're a bunch of fucking jokers here. This is like ridiculous. If you take us seriously, then
I mean, but it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, because of that, like this is something that people like will actually rely on. Like I've had people come up to me and say, "Why do you do it?" And it's one of those things. I'm not trying to pretend this is bigger than it is or anything, but like there are people who listen to this because there is nowhere else that has GW basketball talk. And so it's kind of a thing that works.
Yeah, no. It does work. And it would be a lot more fun if they could like beat the St. Louis, maybe. Like, that would be fun, maybe. Or if they could not throw the ball out of bounds with 13 seconds left against George Mason. But unfortunately, that's the hand we were dealt.
So we said 45.
We said 45. We got
54.
to 45. And then we did or talk about the Washington Post sports section. Tune in next week, and we'll talk about ice. No, I'm just kidding. Any more thoughts, David?
If there are, I mean, I guess you hit the nail on the head there. We will be figuring out next week. Us, Jake Sherman, Tim Miller, and Chuck Todd will be doing a roundtable on the state of our country.
We do actually want to. We want to get Jake Sherman on. Tim Miller said that we should get Jake Sherman on instead of him.
That was funny.
I know. I was like, what? And Chuck Todd. Chuck Todd has to be like the white whale. Got to get him.
The white whale is Jonquel Jones.
Okay, fair enough. All right. I think that's about it.
No, I lied. The white whale is Mike Lonergan.
I think legally he is not allowed to come on this podcast.
We're not affiliated with anyone. He can do whatever he wants.
Yeah, but I mean, what do you think he's going to talk about? The weather? I mean, come on.
Yeah.
I'm sure if you're a dedicated enough GW basketball fan, you can find you've got some Twitter DMs from Mike Lonergan. I'll leave it at that. Thank you for listening, and yeah, we'll probably see you next week after the St. Joe's game.